X-Men. Get it!
Toodaloo, old chops, and welcome to another exciting episode of Battle of the Elm. This is your weekly X-Men podcast where we rank every story from I to Z.
This is Adam. I'm not going to attempt a British accent because God knows what that was.
I don't know what you're talking about, mate. Yeah, it really
No, you
dropped
just
on me.
you just switched from British to Cockney to I don't even know what. And if I do it, it's going to end up sounding Australian, and it's just not going to go well.
I think, and this is just me. I'm Zach. This is just me talking. I think that Britain has done enough terrible things to the world that I'm allowed to make fun of the accent. Also, I'm very bad at the British accent. Whichever color of British accent.
And in our defense, if we want to just do pretend British accents, it's not like Chris Claremont does British accents very well in his comics.
Chris Claremont, a man born in the United Kingdom.
So if I try this, I'm going to end up sounding like, a Monty Python character. So,
you remember that time that we were at the Chicago Comics and Entertainment Expo at a Chris Claremont panel, and I asked Chris Claremont a very good academic question about the extensive use of kink in his work, and he looked really embarrassed because his son was up there on stage with him, like his son doesn't know, and he said, "I'm British," and then he tried to avoid the question. And then our friend Ian asked him about his feelings about the movie The Exorcist being Jesuit propaganda.
It was amazing. Really just a series of hard-hitting questions that Claremont needed to hear instead of just telling the story about when he met people from SNL that one time.
And yet, that entire time, he was like, who did I write? It was... Oh, no, because someone asked, hey, Chris, what are your thoughts about the character Silver Samurai? And Chris Claremont's thoughts on the character Silver Samurai are thus: he is a Silver Samurai.
That was...
Don't know what more you needed from that.
That was about it. Oh.
If you ever get a chance to go to a Chris Claremont panel at a convention, you should do it because they're always just... It's an old man yelling.
Listen, Zach, by the time I talk to you for our next episode, you will have gone to probably another Chris Claremont panel because you're on your way to C2E2.
I am on my way to C2E2. I will be returned from C2E2 by the time this has gone up, which is a good and great and good and a good time for all of us. I'm excited for it. I'm slightly nervous, but I'm also just you know what? It's going to be...
Yeah, you're going to have a good time. I wish I could be there.
I'm looking forward to seeing some great people.
Yeah, I feel like I was just there, so I'm not joining you, but you guys are going to have a good time. But we are talking about Claremont this week because we have a request for some Excalibur. So, Zach, who made this request?
This request comes to us from number one request asker, Robert. Robert went over to patreon.com/comicsxf, said, folks, I like what you're doing. He dug deep into his heart and his pocketbooks and tossed a couple of coins into our coffer so we can keep doing the show and keep doing the fantastic work that is done over on comicsxf.com. So thank you for that, Robert. You're a gentleman and a scholar, and you wanted us to talk about this week Excalibur 62 to 65, the Return of the Warpies.
Yeah, so Zach, for listeners who may not be familiar with their Captain Britain history, who are the Warpies and where are they coming from, and who are these creatures?
Okay, so Adam, are you familiar with much Captain Britain?
I mean, I've read a little bit of it. I can't say I'm an expert, but from what I understand, the Warpies were living in Captain Britain's basement or something like that, and now they've been co-opted.
Kinda, sorta. you know about Mad Jim Jaspers?
Jim Jaspers is the reality warping sort of brother of the Braddocks, right? Jamie Braddock? Or no, Jim Jaspers is the
Nope,
other guy.
Nope. Jim Jaspers is the different one.
But
It's
he does the
other
same
one.
thing, right?
Listen, Jim Jaspers does the exact same things as Jamie Braddock, and it's very weird that they are both so connected to these stories. Jim Jaspers is an anti mutant politician not anti-mutant per se. He's anti-superhero. Jim Jaspers of an alternate reality did create the Fury. It kills superheroes.
Right.
And he warped all of reality in a thing called the Jaspers Warp. Here's the thing. It's Alan Moore's dry run at Watchmen and Miracle Man.
Mm-hmm. Tells the same story a couple times.
He's doing the same thing. All of them very different. Anyway, you don't need to know any of that except for that the Jaspers Warp caused some weird, not mutant, but kind of mutant-y things, and they called them Warpies. And then, since those stories were never published in the U.S. During their initial run, and not until like a decade later, no one knew anything or cared anything about them, because that all may as well have just not happened. But Alan Davis did write that story, and when he was on Excalibur, he said, well, darn it, I'm not going to forget that story, even if everyone else does.
Right. So the Warpies have returned. Now they're working for a secret government entity called the RCX. And they are being led by this dude who kind of looks like a priest. What's his name? St. Peter?
Yeah, he's St. Peter.
Agent
it's Nigel
Peter.
Orpington Smythe.
Yes.
Yeah, Agent Peter.
Agent Peter.
It's Nigel Orpington Smythe, everyone's favorite British character.
Yeah, I mean, he really has a fan following. And, I was I was reading this and I was thinking a lot about that Legion arc that we just read from Spurrier, because this is another one where our heroes are being brought into a situation when being told over and over, everything's fine. There's no secret plot here. There's no evil people. Just help us, and we can be your friends. And it doesn't go well.
Yeah, the thing about RCX is that they had inherited the roles previously held by FI6 and WHO and STRIKE, and would eventually be superseded by Black Air, as we all know from our British history. And then I believe MI6 actually becomes the final thing of that. Regardless, it all gets tied in to this. And Excalibur, they get tied into some Warpy action.
Yeah, and the reason that they're asking for Excalibur's help is that the Warpies are starting to lose their powers and become human. And there's a suspicion there's another agency that's working on depowering them. Our characters are concerned as well. Captain Britain is not feeling up to snuff, even though that's completely unrelated and has something to do with Roma and losing some powers in Otherworld. So, Nightcrawler's game. He's a nice guy. He's like, I'll help out, whatever. But that him and Kitty quickly realize, mainly Kitty, that not all is well at RCX, and that this dude is a really creepy colonist, racist booger who just wants to reestablish the British Empire across the globe.
Which is bad.
No kidding.
It is. So you get some stuff. Alan Davis writes and draws this with Mark Farmer on inks, Glennis Oliver on colors. And they have a big fight, and they save the day, and then Phoenix comes back.
Yeah. And along the way, we get Warpies, we get the Cherubim, including Giggles. There's just so many wacky.
The Cherubim are also Warpies. There's 5 different Warpy teams in this. There's the Sky Pilots, the Cherubim, the Advocates, the Seraphim, and then there's another Warpy team that's not named. Alan Davis is throwing a lot of Warpy-based continuity at you in this arc. And I do believe your enjoyment of this arc is going to be based on how much you care about the Warpies.
I don't know if that's as true as the fact that you have to be on board for Alan Davis's nonsense. He is invested in drawing these wacky, funny-looking characters. One of them is not Joy Boy, but straight up looks like a peanut covered in flesh on like a little mojo spider pedestal. And, you know,
listen, a flesh peanut is not the type of thing that I am particularly interested in, but I could see the appeal for others.
But you can see how a lot of these characters are just fun Alan Davis creations pulled right from his sketchbook, you know, like, because at some point all of our Excalibur characters are paired up with other Warpies who can depower them, and each one of them has their own name and their own design and their own costume, and you can just tell that Alan Davis is having a lot of fun here, and frankly, I'm enjoying it as well. There's some wacky and frankly very beautiful stuff with Rachel floating off into space.
The Rachel stuff is unimpeachable. It's great. It's perfect. We love it.
Yeah, and I think especially if you are a Nightcrawler fan, you will very much enjoy this arc because it is showing off his character and his leadership as he is trying to be as empathetic as he possibly can to this situation, but also realizing that this is not correct. Something is wrong.
Here's my problem, Adam.
Yeah.
And we've run into this with other comics like Jason Aaron's Wolverine and the X-Men. Mm-hmm. I've got a specific limit of nonsense that I can deal with on a day-to-day basis. And this story uses up its nonsense quotient in the first issue.
Okay.
And there's 4 more to
So
go.
by the time you get to like the last issue where they actually drop in some of the Marvel UK characters on a TV screen, like how are you feeling about that?
I looked at it and said, none of these are Deathlock 2. Or Death's Head 2, excuse me.
Yeah, it is.
And Death's Head 2 is the only one that I know about. Like, Adam, have you read Dark Angel? I know the X-Men did appear in a lot of those Marvel UK stories, but did you read them? Because I sure haven't.
I did not read. I believe the title was called Hell's Angel, and I don't believe that.
Dark Angel and Hell's Angel, they had to change it at a certain point. I think it originally was Hell's Angel, but the Hell's Angels have a...
Yeah.
they do have one lawyer who rides motorcycles.
Threatened to slash some tires and some, Achilles tendons.
If there's one group I don't want to do copyright infringement against, it's a group that definitely helped distribute a lot of meth in the 60s.
So yeah, I agree. There's a lot of nonsense. However, this is sort of in this realm. Like if you are a fan of this stuff, and I realized that like even as this was coming out, like you said, it would be difficult to track down the actual Captain Britain stuff to even know who these characters are or what the history of them are. But there is a fun sensibility to this that I enjoy. For example, at one point there is a Warpie that is very clearly, his name is Wire, and he is very clearly made to look like he's Cable. And so you can tell Alan Davis is having a little fun at his colleagues' expense.
Well, see, that's one thing that I do think is very odd about this, is that Alan Davis, and this is true for Alan Davis's entire tenure on the book, but feels especially true in 1993 when all of the other X-Men books are coming off of Executioner's Song, and Alan Davis is sitting here with his silly Warpies story. Alan Davis is writing a 1980s Marvel comic, not a 1990s Marvel comic. And I don't necessarily hold that against him. But I do think this particular arc suffers probably the most out of all of Davis's arcs with that disconnect. Possibly because I don't care about Captain Britain continuity. It possibly has something to do with that. Possibly has something to do with I don't care about any Marvel UK continuity. Possibly has something to do with the story's kind of just an excuse for him to draw a lot of things.
Yeah, but I think for that reason, I'm enjoying this a lot more than you are. I'm not concerned whatsoever about the continuity of the agencies or who these Warpies are. I'm just having a really good time with Alan Davis and his silly creations. And there are many. Like we get to some pages and there's 30 characters on a page, and Alan Davis is like, yeah, no sweat, I got this. I'm going to draw these little gremlins and it's going to be great. And he gets a chance to do Micromax. He gets a chance to do Kai Lund. So if you are into, he's got Cerise here. So if you are into these bananas characters, I think I don't know. I'm trying as much as I possibly can to reopen my mind to this book because I think I've, thought about it negatively for so long. And when I go back, especially to this Alan Davis run, I realize that it's not a piece with what is going on in the time period, but I also don't care. I think it's a lot of fun.
And this is the difference between you and me, I think. Because my thought is, Kylon, Cerise, Micromax, Farron.
Yeah.
Hate them all.
Oh, really? Okay. I mean,
like
Farron is pretty
Cerise
terrible.
is the best. Farron's terrible. Micromax is terrible, but Micromax is terrible in the way that if he would have won the X-Men election, I would have laughed so hard it's not even funny. I would have thought that's the best thing in the world to have this absolute disaster of a character beyond the X-Men. I can see the appeal of that.
Yeah.
I don't get Kylun. I don't see the appeal. I don't know. It's just like,
yeah, but
I don't know what he's doing in my X-Men book.
Here's the thing we have to remember about Excalibur is that it is, is very much still rooted in those Captain Britain stories of yore, right? But it's also rooted in sort of like this fantasy time travel, like all this weird stuff that they did with, cross time and having, Nightcrawler go off and, hey, we're going to have knights in this issue and we're going to go off to alternate histories in this issue. And we're going to have Nightcrawler be a fantasy, John Carter on Mars in this issue. And I feel like it does all work. Like if you read the stuff that Lobdell does immediately after Davis, like it's very clear that there's a tone to this book and this is it. And other people do not understand how to do it.
I don't disagree that Scott Lobdell is bad at writing Excalibur. I just don't know if this is where Alan Davis's Excalibur works for me.
Oh, that's fair. I mean, there's a nice chunk of Alan Davis Excalibur, and I think that a huge part of this for me is not even the story. It's just the fun of what Alan Davis is just an amazing artist, and watching him
Davis is great.
Watching him play and have fun like this is a blast. Is this like the peak? Is this the biggest highlight? Probably not, but it's also just it's still fun. I think it's still okay.
Well, we've spent nearly 15 minutes arguing if Alan Davis is good or not. And knowing our audience, I have a feeling that there are people who are not thrilled with some of the choices that I've made in this episode, i.e. saying anything bad about Cerise, who is like maybe the 5th best Shi'ar character. Maybe.
5th best, wow. Yeah, okay.
Okay, so you got Lilandra.
She's number 1?
Deathbird.
Deathbird's number 1, right? Xandra is better than Cerise? Yeah, I guess.
I would say Xandra is better than Cerise.
Well, Xandra's dead. Isn't Xandra dead?
Xandra is resurrected.
Okay. All right. Oh, right.
You need to read...
No, she is.
You need to read
I saw that.
X-Men Red. Hey, folks, if you haven't read X-Men Red from last week, go read X-Men Red from last week, because it rules. Just, that's unrelated to any of this. There's not even Shi'ar stuff in that one, but go read that. Also, Gladiator is a better character.
Yeah.
I would even say the Mad Emperor Deken is a more interesting character.
Okay. These are good characters. I'll give you that. All right, we should probably get into ranking this.
Oh yeah, because we rank comics on this podcast. We don't just say bad things about Alan Davis books to the fact that it is going to cause us bodily harm in the future, I'm sure. We are ranking X-Men comics from best to worst. We have ranked 660 nice issues.
Wow.
X-Men, not issues. We've ranked several more than that in terms of issues. Oh my gosh. Can you
never
imagine
did the count. Never did the count.
Like, let's assume on average 3 issues a line, and that's overcounting some, undercounting others. But let's just take an average of 3. We're darn near 2,000 individual issues of comics that we've covered, Adam. Easily. That's too many comic books that we've read.
Well, we don't read them all at once,
It's been a few years. It's been just a couple of years here. We'll talk about that later. An era. No, we rank them from best to worst. The best X-Men story is The House of X, The Powers of 10. Don't at me. The 100th best X-Men story is the Hickman New Mutants. The 200th best X-Men story is X Infernus. The 300th best X-Men story is Champions number 12. The 400th best is Bishop's Crossing. That's the time the Bishop crossed. The 500th best is Generation M. Number 600 on our list is New Mutants Volume 2, 7 through 12, The Ties That Bind. That's the time that Rain, the werewolf lady, did sleep with one of her students. And 669 is the Draco.
Wow. All right, so why don't we start with...
She did it, not me. It wasn't me. It was Rain.
Ugh. We don't have to... Just complete character and assassination.
That already had... It already had its episode. It's fine.
Yeah, we don't need to relitigate. All right, is this better or worse than Bishop's Crossing?
I don't think we'd be relitigating it. We'd be saying that it's bad still.
Okay, that's true. We've reached our verdict.
I want to be clear. Number 70 on the list right now is The Righteous Return of you-know-who. That's The Righteous Return of Alan Davis. So that's at number 70. This isn't nearly as good as that.
No, is this better than Bishop's Crossing at 400?
Well, okay. Well, 407... Yeah, this is better than Girls' School from Heck.
Yeah.
I don't like Girls' School from Heck.
No, this is much better, I think. Is this better than Skinny of Souls at 377? X-Men 17 to 19.
Look, when I said that it was not of a piece with its era, I didn't necessarily mean all the things in its era were better than it. Skinny of Souls is not very good either.
Okay. All right.
But is this better than at 353, The Fall of Avalon?
I mean, art-wise, it absolutely is. That is not Paul Smith's best. I would say this is better, but I don't think this is better than Schism at 349.
Alan Davis draws this better than Alan Davis draws Schism, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Yep. So
this isn't better than the Savage Land story in Marvel Fanfare.
No, I think they're about the same though. Like that's we're right about at the same point, you know?
You know what? I think right below that's at 350 right now. Below that at 351 is the Astonishing X-Men Start of Lose arc with both North Star's wedding and all of the stuff with Karma's family, and I think that is better than this. Yeah. I could give this the edge over the Submergence of Japan.
X-Men 118 to 119, I agree. So this is going to be our new 352.
It will be our new 352. It's Excalibur, the Return of the Warpies.
Yeah. And if you don't know who the Warpies are, it doesn't matter. They are not going to come back this episode. However, we are still going to cover 2 more classic Excalibur stories.
The next one we are going to cover comes from the era of Inferno. This is right at the start of Excalibur. This is Excalibur 6, and we're going to go straight through number 8, because number 8 kind of acts as a coda to this whole event. It's the Inferno stuff.
Yeah.
You know Inferno. We did a whole Inferno episode back years ago. Y'all should know about the Inferno.
That was year 1, I think, right?
That was our first Halloween.
Yeah. And we've been slowly patching up the the odds and ends of Inferno that we have not covered. And this is definitely one we've left hanging out there. So this is Alan Davis and Chris Claremont, of course, with Mark Davis and Glynis Oliver.
Is it? No, it's Paul Neary.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And Glynis Oliver.
I'm sorry. I got the inker wrong there.
Yep. Because I think Paul Neary's inks are actually pretty critical to Alan Davis at this time.
You know what? I think I just squished their names together. That's what I did. I did it bad.
How dare you? Number 8 is drawn by Ron Lim with Joseph Rubinstein and John Wilcox.
Yeah, can we get that one out of the way first? It's very bad. It's the story of Captain Britain walking around in short shorts and Megan assuming every characteristic of folks she's walking around with, including African Americans on a basketball court.
Listen, it makes perfect. Okay, I'm gonna say this, and I want to say this very precisely.
Okay, go ahead.
It makes perfect logical sense that the fictional character Megan does not understand that doing brownface is a bad thing to do.
Go ahead.
Megan, the character, would not understand that.
Right.
And I can appreciate that innocence.
Yes.
Christopher Claremont, the real person who wrote this comic, absolutely should know better and didn't. And that's a rough one.
Yeah.
This whole issue is just like a denouement from Inferno. It's wrapping up a few of the loose ends. It's setting up some stuff as they move forward. Brian's dealing with the fact that he's so far away from the British Isles that he doesn't have his powers very good right now. Everyone else is just doing some things.
Yeah. So
fine.
let's not talk about that one anymore. It's bad. However, 6 and 7, an absolute blast. I was talking a minute ago about Excalibur's comedic tone and how it's a very silly book. And one of the things that I've said previously on this show is that Inferno, the part of Inferno that doesn't always work for me is the cartoony stuff where it's like, hey, it's Ghostbusters and everything is coming to life and there's jokes. Haha. We finally have a book where that actually kind of makes sense. Like, of all of the books for characters to encounter talking cars and mailboxes that eat people, it would be Excalibur. And here, it's a lot of fun.
It's adjacent to fun. Again, and I don't know if this is me or what, but there's parts of this that I'm just like not as into as maybe I would want to be. I understand what they're trying to do. They're having everybody face their fears and then do this whole media thing where they're like talking about movies and all this stuff and making gags about that. But I also just don't like 100% get the joke that they're trying to make.
Well, I mean, I don't know that Inferno really understands what it's doing either, other than riffing off of Ghostbusters. But, you know, here at least they're having a blast with it. So, you know, Rachel gets turned into a mannequin, a la the 80s movie Mannequin, except in reverse. And a goblin who works for Nastir is going to marry her and get the power of the Phoenix Force, which is, I think, kind of funny. And then Kitty and Brian get stuck inside of like a parody of Stallone Schwarzenegger horror. The second issue has Brian basically as like a combination of Jason and Freddy chasing Kitty. And I don't know, if you are a fan of 80s pop culture, you will probably enjoy these two issues just based on like the references that are here.
Okay, here's the thing. I've watched Stranger Things. I understand the references.
Did you just say you understand the 80s solely via the show that references the 80s?
Yes, Adam. I was born after those times.
Oh, no.
You need to remember, Adam. You need to remember. We've been doing this for years. You know this.
I know.
You know this.
I'm old and creaky, and you're a baby. I get it.
Back to Inferno.
Yes. There's fun stuff happening here. There's a gargoyle that looks at Nightcrawler and becomes his friend, and we have to differentiate between gargoyles and demons. And
I guess
I don't know. Like, I think that if you are a fan of Excalibur, you are a fan of Excalibur because of the silly tone that it is taking right here with issues like these. And I don't know. I find it enjoyable. I like how Forbidden Planet got a hole blasted through it, and it now has like an actual portal to an alien planet with a UFO on it. Like, that's cool.
What I'm starting to wonder, Adam, is if I don't actually like Excalibur as much as I thought I liked Excalibur.
I am starting to think that I have been converted and you have been left at the bus stop because
That's wild. If people want to know how our lives have changed in those years, man, that sure tells you a little bit about it. It's odd. Like, there's stuff I like. I do think some of the storytelling can be tighter. Like, Megan is an empath,
right?
But her powers have never been like well defined. Mm-hmm. So they do just go in here assuming that you know all of Megan's deal.
Yeah.
And that why the moment they get into New York, she immediately turns evil. Like, she's the first person. Like, I feel like there's some structural things about establishing what Inferno is, what is going on, that these comics do not do as well as they could. I do think Dominatrix, Goblin Princess Megan, is a very fun turn for the character.
Yeah. I enjoy everything that's happening here, and I don't think it needs to be over-explained because they assume, just like, you know, it's the biggest publishing event that was happening at the time that you're reading it. So they're not going to over-explain it. Excalibur is never really part of the story. The only reason they're here at all is because Rachel has the link to Nathan, and which ties back to their initial meeting. And that's about it. They go on this misadventure, and then they gotta head back to grand old Britain.
No, first they have to stay in the United States so Kitty can go yell at the New Mutants in a bizarre scene.
Yeah, that sucks. Where she's still yelling at them about being kids, and they're like, "We're older than you. Shut up."
Yeah, I feel like at a certain point, Danny would walk over and say, "Catherine, we are the same age. You are older than Rain, and you are older than Bobby, and that is it."
Yeah. So please just stop your yammering.
Could you chill? Could you chill for 5 seconds? Man, Kitty Pryde has no chill. Hey, is this the issue where Kitty Pryde gets turned into a baby wearing a diaper?
Yes, by Rachel, because Rachel is thinking about a baby. So when she breaks through all 4 or 5 floors of the lighthouse that they live in, she transforms Kitty into she's not a baby. She's just dressed kind of like a baby.
You remember all that thing that we said at the top of the episode about Chris Claremont at conventions?
Being weird. Yep, this is it. And then Alan has to drive it.
Joke.
He has to draw it, I
made this joke on Twitter the other day. Chris Claremont and John Byrne are both perverts, but they're both very different types of perverts.
Yes. That's probably very true.
Man, we should rank this weird, horny Chris Claremont comic.
Yeah, I think this is a lot of fun. I like this better than the Warpies story we were just talking about, but I don't think it's going to rank nearly as high as the other installments of Inferno are.
I like it better than the Warpies story. Mm-hmm. I agree.
So...
where do we have Inferno at? The lowest Inferno we have is... the lowest Inferno we have is what if... Wolverine was Lord of the Vampires during Inferno.
Yeah, that one's rough.
The main arc of Inferno in X-Men and X-Factor is in 126.
Okay. Yeah.
This is as good as this. The mini Inferno from Power Pack, the Inferno dry run.
Yep.
That's at 232. And the Battle World Inferno is at 237. I think Battle World Inferno is better than this.
I would agree. I think that's a lot more cohesive. I do still think this is fun. It is good, classic Excalibur here. So I guess I'm just curious where we want to go with this.
Is this better than 261 Wolverine, Ghost Rider, Punisher, Hearts of Darkness?
No, it is not. Because
it's not.
I love that book.
That's the one I can always use to get you. I can always be like, Adam, it's better than this. And you're like, I mean, it's not. But right below that is Capwolf. This isn't better than Capwolf.
No, it's not. Might be better than X-Men Origins Jean Grey at 288, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is not as good as 282, which is Marvel Team Up 149, which is that issue where Cannonball has to buy his mom.
Oh, yeah. Yep. I think this is on par with the Generation X Volume 2 issues 6 and 7, where they go to the supervillain auction.
The auction? I think that's the right spot. This would go right between then that Marvel Team Up and that Generation X story as our new 283.
Nice. All right. So let's go to our final story, which is going to be a true test of your love or something else of Excalibur, because we're going to talk about the first issue, not Excalibur #1, but Excalibur Special Edition #1 or whatever this is called. The Sword is Drawn.
Hey, can we take one small diversion about Excalibur #1?
Yeah.
Why don't more comics that aren't Excalibur or Excalibur-based comics do a riff on the cover to Excalibur #1? Because that cover rules.
I mean, you get a bunch of them in Excalibur, and there have been other artists that have played with that design, but you're absolutely right. It is killer.
That should be a legacy cover that people are constantly homaging. I don't understand it.
It's really easy to do. There's just characters standing there in a formation, Go for it.
If we're going to have Leinil Francis Yu out there doing characters standing in front of the cover in going backwards, at least we could do it like Alan Davis did it. Like Linnell, just do a riff on this one time. It'll be better than all the rest of them.
Hey, speaking of great covers, the Sword is Drawn cover where we have the Excalibur team fighting against TechNet and the Werewolves is fantastic. It really shows off how good Alan Davis is at, movement, at characters interacting, at expressions, at character design. It's just killer.
Why do I like TechNet so much more than the Warpies?
That's a great question because they are a little bit different though. I think that the design of TechNet is probably a little more sophisticated than some of the Warpies stuff, at least especially the more minor ones. Plus, once you've seen TechNet and then you see Joy Boy, but then you see Peanut later, you're like, oh, Peanut is like Joy Boy Volume 2,
Kai Lun is definitely just Alan Davis redoing Pharaoh from TechNet.
Oh, from TechNet.
No.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like the guy with the fencing swords. Now,
the guy that looks like Kai Lun.
Yeah. What's always been interesting to me about The Sword is Drawn is that I always felt like, especially at 48 pages, that this might have been, and I don't know this to be true. Was it considered for a Marvel graphic novel? To have an intro like New Mutants, because the coloring is definitely a little bit different process than you see on the regular issues, and the art is absolutely gorgeous in this book.
The art is fantastic, and I believe it. I don't know if it was meant for an OGM, but it is a perfect bound edition, and what they were able to do in terms of printing color on those was less limited than what they were able to do with standard comics of the time, or at least I don't know if it was a limitation of the format or just a limitation of the budget.
Yeah, I don't know, but it is interesting.
But this looks so much better. Like the colors, like just the fact that Glennis Oliver is like, I'm allowed to do a little bit more. Perfect.
Yeah.
This is great. I'll add some gradients in here. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, it looks like there might be some colored pencil work, some watercolors in here, and it is ravishing. So we are really getting the team all set up here. And Nightcrawler and Kitty had kind of been in stasis for a while from Uncanny. And now...
After the Mutant Massacre.
Right, and now they get sucked in to the Captain Britain mythos with Megan, and we get the return of Phoenix, who, in a great opening to this story, does seem to still be like linked to Mojo World and Mojo Studios, because we open with this fantastic double-page spread of the Aussie team on a movie set with Professor X as the director. I love this.
It's a gorgeous scene. And it really does pick up right where we left off in that never published Rick Leonardi, Chris Claremont Phoenix miniseries.
Yeah, so for people who never heard us mention that before, can you give us the rundown on what the general gist of that was? Because that was what was supposed to happen after Rachel was brought to the body shop by Spiral.
Yeah, you remember when Wolverine told Rachel that she wasn't allowed to kill Selene?
So stupid. He would rather die than let her kill Selene. Come on.
She can't be stained with the same blood that's on his hands, Adam. That would be so rude.
So stupid.
She's just a child. She's just
a child from an apocalyptic future where Wolverine has been blasted to bits in front of her eyes. Like, come on, Wolverine.
They're just innocent men.
Oh my God.
No. We've already talked about that story. It's not a great one. In our view.
Yes.
What was supposed to happen, and this was announced in like the trade stuff of the time, and some work was started on this, but Chris Claremont and Rick Leonardi were going to do a mini series about Phoenix that never came to be.
Right.
I think Leonardi got busy, and then life goes on. Sometimes things don't happen. It's fine. Not all projects go through. Marvel was just a heck of a lot more cavalier about announcing projects back in the 80s. Anyway, something was supposed to happen with the Phoenix and Mojo World and maybe some Shadow King stuff. Who really knows? It doesn't matter. She escapes from the body shop and she's like, I gotta figure out where my friends are. The X-Men have all fallen and followed the mutants and are dead. Nightcrawler and Kitty are not happy about this. And oh, wouldn't you know, as they go and talk to Captain Britain, who is Betsy's brother, who Betsy died. Captain Britain, going through a lot right now. He's deep into his alcoholism, which I believe was established in, like, Spider-Man stories.
Really?
I think it was... You remember when Brian and Spider-Man were roommates?
Yes.
It was in that. I don't know if that was Marvel Team Up or one of the ancillary Spider-Man's books.
Okay.
But they did... hold on. It was Marvel Team Up. They were only roommates for a little bit, too. Anyway, he was drinking a lot. He continues to drink a lot here because he's sad. Nightcrawler literally throws him into the Atlantic Ocean and says, listen, I need you sober for this. My friends died too. I'm not happy about it. But my other friend who's still alive needs help because a large blue woman has just appeared and I'm horny and scared and I need to save my friend.
It is pretty great. You know, we get introduced in very short succession to all of our main characters. We get introduced to the werewolves who are like really creepy and are wearing the flesh of these, Mojo-verse versions of the X-Men and then pop out through their mouths. It's totally horrifying. We get the TechNet. You know, they're also...
We get Opal Luna Saturnine.
Opal Luna Saturnine shows up, so we're getting the other world.
Kitty is taken by Opal Luna Saturnine.
Oh, definitely. I mean, if you want to...
It's to a level.
It's so amazing to me that people could ever deny for a second that Kitty was into the ladies because it's right here on the page. Like, come on.
Some of us, Adam, had poor reading comprehension at certain points in our lives and have since rectified the situation by actually reading things and talking to gay people.
Hey, that was not a judgment against you, sir. It was the larger reading community. So by the end of this, I think that, Captain Britain is like very selfishly saying, all right, well, I'll see you later. I got drinking to do. And the rest of them are pretty... Nightcrawler and Rachel especially are like, wait a minute, we just had a really cool team up. Why are we going to let this stop? Let's live in this lighthouse and solve, supernatural weird stuff. And they do. And that's the beginning of Excalibur. And it is just gorgeous. I mean, the detail, Alan Davis is always great. I mean, even his latter stuff, he's just such an amazing artist. But the pencils on this are so tight. You know, the expressions, every lock of hair is in there. And he just gets these characters in a way that immediately makes them memorable. In a way that I think this is probably how we remember these characters the most, even though Kitty and Nightcrawler and Rachel had all been drawn by multiple artists beforehand.
Alan Davis draws a heck of a story. And Chris Claremont tells a fun story here. Like, I like TechNet.
Yeah.
I like the werewolves. I like this plot where they're like, okay, well, everyone's been captured. Like, TechNet, here's where I think Excalibur works. Excalibur works when it is balancing on the head of a pin between superhero action book and funny farce. Mm-hmm. And I think it can be very easy to go on one way or the other on that. I think there was too much of a correction to superhero action stuff after Davis and Claremont were no longer on the book. And it missed some of the whimsy. And I think in some of the stories that we talked about earlier, maybe too much whimsy for me. I think it's perfectly balanced here in The Sword is Drawn. There's a mix of weird, crazy stuff, like the entire existence of Joy Boy. Joy Boy, who might be... My 3-year-old son crawled up onto my lap as I was reading this, and Joy Boy was on the page, and he was like, "What's that?" And I was like, Joy Boy. He's like, "That's a baby." He said, "I'm not going to explain Joy Boy to you. There comes a time in everyone's life when you need to explain Joy Boy, and it is not now."
Oh, these are really delightful characters. I mean, they're almost Jim Henson-y in the way that they just, have these weird affectations and strange powers. Like, what's the green guy who like vacuums people?
Body bag?
Vacuums you up into a slime ball.
Waxwork is gross.
They're kind of gross,
China Doll and Scatterbrain. I actually, low-key, I love the Scatterbrain design. Like, that's just a very good design for a superhero thing.
Yeah. I mean, if you compare these to, the design of the Marauders, for instance, in Mutant Massacre, I think this is a much more fun and inventive team. So really enjoyed this a lot. And if I'm looking at our list, I think this is probably top 50.
I was going to say, Adam, that this breaks the top 100 for me because it is better than the Hickman New Mutants.
Yep, definitely. Look up the list. Just take a look.
Okay, so I'm looking here. What I'm gonna do is start at 40 and look as we go down. Trial of Magneto is better than this. Havoc and Wolverine Meltdown is better than this. The first arc of Generation X is better than this. That dupe one shot from Wolverine and the X-Men that we covered on our first episode of the podcast is better than this. I don't
think it is. Keep going.
Dead Souls is better than this. Prisoner X is better than this. Grand Design is too high, and we both know it. The first arc of X-Statix, the X-Force arc of X-Statix, the New Mutants Inferno is better than this. That's the best part of Inferno. Cable Past Fears, a comic that I have a page of right there where Cable's hugging his daughter, is better than this.
No, it's not. It's absolutely not. I mean, we have to keep in mind that this is establishing a classic roster and doing it in such style and beauty. I mean, hats off to the amazing artwork and the great writing in that Cable arc, but it does not hold a flame, no pun intended, to this. I mean, this is fantastic. This is classic. If we're gonna go somewhere, I would say maybe the ceiling is the New Mutants arc of Inferno, because
that is absolutely the ceiling. This is not better than the New Mutants Inferno.
Yeah, I think that hits the emotional beats. And now that I'm looking at it, I'm wondering if that's maybe a little too low on our list. Because I think,
Adam, this list is a series of compromises and changing tastes over the entire thing. Again, X-Men Grand Design is at 46 right now. Would we put X-Men Grand Design at 46 right now?
No, we did recency bias on that one. We messed up, but I do think I would put this at 49. I love that Cable arc, but I think that this is very pivotal in, not only what the publishing angle is for these books, but what these characters are and who they're going to be for the future, for decades. This establishes who Kitty Pryde is, in a way that maybe we didn't really even understand previous to this. It's the same.
Hold on. Of all the ones you're picking, Kitty Pryde is the one that you're picking.
Absolutely.
Oh, no, this is the Kitty Pryde.
No, I'm serious. Rachel is redesigned. Kitty is...
Rachel, fine.
Yeah.
Kitty,
Nightcrawler,
you're insane for saying that. Those were strongly established well before this point.
I'm not saying they weren't strongly established. I'm saying that this is still going to be the most memorable version of these characters. For like the majority of readers, I think when people think about Kitty Pryde, obviously they think back to her interactions in their early days as the X-Men, but when we picture her, we're going to picture Alan Davis drawing her playing with a computer. We're going to picture her with Lockheed by her side, drawn by Alan Davis. If Paul Smith is the quintessential Uncanny X-Men artist, Alan Davis is the quintessential artist for this particular set of characters, undeniably, I think.
Okay, but Nightcrawler's there and Dave Cockrum exists.
Yeah, but I get that 100%, and I love the Nightcrawler mini, and the Nightcrawler mini is going to be higher than this. But I still think that if you think of one artist to go along with Nightcrawler, I think most people are going to think of Alan Davis.
That's a wild choice, but I'm not going to fight it, because right below this is All New X-Men 1 through 5, and this is probably better than All New X-Men 1 through 5. So I will concede that this can go above Cable Past Fears as our new number 49 on the list. There you go. And
I think this episode has proven that I have really warmed up to this book, and you are giving it the cold shoulder.
It is.
It's so weird that
odd.
this is the dynamic. Because I think when we started this show, it was probably completely reversed.
Adam, when we started this show 5 years
Oh my
ago,
God.
which folks, this episode does mark 5 years of doing this podcast. We started it on August 7th, 2017. A heck of a lot has changed in our lives, in the world, in our tastes.
It's true.
I actually before this episode was recorded today, I had to run out and grab something. So I said, you know what? I'm going to put on the first episode of the podcast.
Oh, God.
I hadn't listened to it in 5 years. Hold on, Adam. Listen. It could have been worse. Honestly,
sure.
I was expecting a lot worse.
No. It's not like unlistenable. It's just so different than what we sound like now.
I then pulled up the last week's episode just because I wanted to get that immediate gut punch. We are much more comfortable.
Oh, yeah. Come on.
With the rhythm and flow of this podcast after 5 years.
Even if you go about 10 episodes in, you start to feel good, you know?
There is a distinct point of differentiation, and it is exactly when we realized, wait, what if we themed the episodes around a thing?
We figured out what our show was.
That's when we were like, that was such an obvious choice that we didn't make right at the beginning. And we were so close, because the first episode, we have 2 God Loves Man Kill stories.
It's amazing.
We almost had it! Anyway, but I say all this to say 2 things. One, for anyone who's listening or has listened in the past, thank you so much for your support over the last 5 years. It's kind of wild how many people have jumped on, and I've been recognized by my voice at conventions and stuff. It's not something I expected to happen. And it really does mean a lot to me that there's a lot of people who are out there enjoying this week in and week out. And as great as all you listeners are, even more important to me is getting to do this for 5 years with my friend Adam. This has been so great, Adam, and I'm so glad we've gotten to do this for this time.
Yeah, I mean, 5 years, it sounds absolutely insane, but it really hasn't felt like that. And it's been really enjoyable. I love doing the show. Listeners, thank you. If folks are interested in more Excalibur content, weirdly enough, the Oh Gosh Golly Wow podcast, hosted by Anna Peppard and Claremont Run, and God, I always forget the name of the third host. I apologize, sir. They are covering the Warpies arc right now. And on Comics XF, our best X-Men stories continues with Anna Peppard's awesome write-up about Sword is Drawn, and do not miss that. That is a tremendous piece. It's absolutely beautiful.
Absolutely go check that out. We've got that and much more over at Comics XF. If you want to keep the home fires burning, you want to keep us running over there, maybe toss a couple of coins over to the Patreon at patreon.com/comicsxf. Hey, maybe if you do that, we'll do an episode all about a comic of your choosing. And folks, because this is the first time we've been able to say this in a while, due to people not responding on Patreon for whatever reason, we're like the closest we've ever been to being able to get you a suggestion on here. Like, we are now only like 6 months out. So get a Patreon and jump in there before everyone else does, because these spots are going to fill up fast.
I love that 6 months out is like the opening that people might be waiting for.
Adam, it was previously like 2 years.
Yeah.
We had a bit of a slowdown on some things, and then 30 people not respond. By the way, if you're one of those 30 people who has subscribed either now or in the past, and you are a lapsed Patreon subscriber, I have your name written down here, so you let me know. We'll slot you in nice, real quick. I'm not going to read out all your names. It's 30 names. If you're sitting there mad like, well, I never got my reward. Maybe you didn't check your messages, because there's like 30 of you.
We want to do a show for you, so check your inbox and maybe your spam in case it went there.
I don't want to. Here's the thing, folks. If me and Adam have to go back to picking these episodes on our own, I don't want to do that.
I don't want to do that.
Doesn't sound fun.
No.
I don't want. I want someone to say, here's one decision that you can make, and then me and Adam saying, what's the dumbest way we could do this? Because that's how it works.
That is 100% true.
We just set up like the next couple of months worth of episodes, and several things were, well, this will be a dumb thing to talk about. I love comic books so much. Adam, anything else you got going on?
Folks, you can always follow me on Twitter at Arthur Stacy. A couple weeks from now, I will be a guest on the TV Trivia Pod, and I'll let you know when that episode is. I had a conversation / trivia questions about the absolutely terrible Will Ferrell movie Land of the Lost. It was a fun time, so when that comes out, I'll make sure you guys know about it. And
I had the opportunity to watch that movie for free once in a movie theater, and I chose not to.
Yeah, it's real bad. So Zach, what are we doing next week?
Adam, as was foretold, the sword is drawn. And do you know how many swords have been drawn, Adam?
22.
Buds, we've drawn a lot of swords. And we're going to talk about 10 of Swords and other sword-based content next week. Folks, we're back to being a swords podcast. You thought we were done. You thought 2 years ago we had quit being a sword podcast. But you know what? I've never taken down my framed picture of Pog or Pog. I've never done that. I've been here with the swords since day one. It doesn't matter that at C2E2 2020, I tried to convince friend of the show Chris Edelman to also buy swords with me so we could be sword people, and he said no, the coward that he is.
That was the rightest decision, Chris.
Oh my gosh, I'm imagining if I came home and be like, wife, I have sword. She'd say, what are you doing with your life?
Please go sleep in the car.
It's why I have instead chosen to have framed art of Pog or Pog, who is himself a sword.
I like that. That's better.
It means sword of sword.
Yep.
Sword the sword, excuse me. Folks, I love 10 of Swords. It's, spoiler alert, it's going to do well on the list. I can't wait to revisit it. Until then, folks, this right here has and will always be Battle of the Atom. And we hope you survived the experience.
Get it!